always trying to be comfortable, And I think going back to your question, like what makes you fearless, sometimes you got to be uncomfortable in order to be in those better positions, right? Although the decision to transition made me feel a little bit, uneasy because it was just something new. I knew that I was confident in myself and with the right team. And the way I think about it is this, like, okay, is 30-year-old, 40-year-old Fabian going to look back at 20-year-old and be like, thank you for doing those things at that age, you know what I mean? Or is it going to be like, man, why didn't you do more?
Okay, here we are, special episode of Rate of Success podcast. I want to start interviewing loan officers, and there was no place I wanted to start better than introducing a brand new loan officer in the industry who just started with us. I thought it'd be a unique opportunity to talk through kind of the process of getting in the business, becoming a loan officer, but more importantly, doing that within our branch and all the things that we do. So with me today is Fabian. He just joined our office 30 days ago, okay? And why I wanted to have him here is we've already had 3 contracts submitted and 2 closings. His second one today, right?
Yes, today.
Okay, so Fabian, why don't you just give a brief introduction, name, how long you've been in the business, including all areas of the business, and just kind of a little bit about your path to get here at our branch.
Yeah, most definitely. So, my name is Fabian. I've actually been in the business for, I want to say, since 2020. So it's been like 4 or 5 years now. I kind of started when COVID actually hit. So it was a lot of refinances, things like that. So at that time, I was kind of doing back-end processing, not really so much front-end like a loan officer that I am today. But, through my journey, I actually started with Guaranteed Rate in 2020. Was there for a couple of years, and then I ended up finding my way back.
As we always say, in this business, and it's something that I always talk about, is nobody ever plans to get in the mortgage industry or real estate for that matter. We talk to a lot of realtors. We all kind of end up here by mistake. Okay.
I agree.
So what was the path? What were you doing before, and what kind of drew you into? Obviously, COVID was a unique time, so it's almost a difficult time to get in the industry. But what was that path before that? Did you already, kind of know somebody in the industry, or what brought you to the mortgage industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think your point is 100% accurate as far as like I didn't expect or plan to be in this position. And crazy story. So you know what? I actually was going to college at first, straight out of high school, and because I think that's like the stereotypical thing you do after high school. I ended up going to a college job fair, getting interviewed with a bank called TCF Bank, right? Yeah. So this bank, I ended up being a teller, and then I kind of just learned the ropes of, customer service, being able to talk to clients, and, kind of cross-sell in a way. So through that transition through the bank, I started learning how to build credit. I started learning a bit more about savings, finances, and it started like a real 40-hour-a-week, position.
Yeah.
The supervisor there at the time, actually, she knew a loan officer. I think it was her boyfriend at the time. Point is, she understood that I knew I wanted to go into, buy real estate, right? I wanted to get involved and get a multi-unit, start investing. So after about 2 years of being there and after establishing my credit, she's like, hey, do you want to go in and talk to my guy? He works, he actually worked with Guaranteed Rate.
Yeah.
So my loan officer at the time, he helped me with the process, got pre-approved, started shopping for my first multi-unit at 20 years old. So at the time that I closed, he was very surprised, like, on the way I spoke to him and kind of how I dealt business at that age. Because there's not a lot of 20-year-olds that kind of do that kind of thing, So after the closing, a couple weeks later, he gives me a call out of the blue, and he's like, hey, Fabian, like, how's everything going? And I was like, great. Quick question, like, how do you like your job now? Boom, boom, boom. And, one thing led to another, and he's like, hey, I want to offer you a position here, with my team. You're young. I liked how you talked on the phone. It sounds like you're a sharp young man.
Yeah.
How much are they paying you now? I think at the time I was getting paid, like, barely minimum wage, the bank teller plus commissions. And he's like, I'll give you $2, $3 more. Come join us, here at in the mortgage side. So that's kind of how my journey started. So
great.
It was unexpected. I really thought I was going to stay in banking for a while. And the loan officer, brought me on.
So let's talk about this a little bit because, so you were 20 years old when you bought your first multi-unit. Is that correct?
20 years old.
Okay, so that in itself, defies, I think the stat because you hear me saying it all the time, but the average first-time home buyer last year was 38. Okay, so, and it's really kind of the main reason why I wanted to have you on this podcast, because you kind of have defied a lot of the normal routes that most people take to get to this business, let alone homeownership. Yeah. Okay, so what was the mindset at 20? Okay, because there had to be a story prior to that that made you say, I want to buy a property? Because, what I was doing at 20 years old had nothing to do with buying a multi-unit. So, and I think this is, a very important piece, because I see how you are in your business and I see your drive. And if you had drive to do that at 20, there had to have been something that happened prior to that that really gave you that motivation to do that. So what was the journey like prior to that?
Yeah, you know what? Crazy story too. So, I think at that age, I've always kind of been a kind of a math guy. So I always like to, either sell chips or like sweaters. And, I understood where if you were to get it to a certain price and you were able to kind of get clients and sell to other people at a higher price, you can keep, some type of profit margin, right? So I felt like I was always kind of go with numbers, especially, going to the bank. So that transition, during high school, I was a teenager, rebel, I wasn't, so I ended up actually getting kicked out of my mom's house at 17, 18 years old. So I ended up, living in her bedroom with my brother and my uncle. And that's kind of where the sacrifice came. And I think a lot of people go through change and come out of this situation through hardship, right? When your back's against the wall, you have nowhere else to go. The only way to go is up, right? So I think because of that, it kind of made me feel like, okay, I can't be living, this life anymore. I need to step up. I need to do something different, right? So I ended up, that's when I kind of got into the bank. And through that journey, I know I didn't want to rent. My mom actually had just bought a multi-unit at the time, maybe like 2 years prior, and we were kind of fixing it up. And she kind of gave me an insight of what it is to kind of be a landlord to a certain extent. Now, once I was able to get my requirements, 2-year work history, credit, savings, I was like, you know what? Let's give it a try. I don't want to pay rent to somebody else. I'd rather have my rent get paid for me.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So that's one of the things. And the social media was really a key for me too. And I think that's why a lot of people nowadays want to do that house hacking. Buying a multi-unit, renting one, cover most of your your bill for you. Because one thing is this, buying a house is a great asset, but when you're paying for it completely for yourself, it becomes a liability.
Yeah,
right?
no, absolutely. And what about, so you buy this house at 20, which I think is just amazing. And, so you buy this house. What have you learned doing that, that you weren't actually prepared for at the time? Obviously, being a landlord, the common things, but is there anything that you look back on now that you can then lean on when you're working with a buyer and working with even a realtor, and your experiences when you bought that multi-unit? Is that something you lean on a lot when you're working with clients?
Yeah, you know what? So my experience when I went through the home buying process really kind of did shape the way I kind of handle business now.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because I didn't have like a sit-down consultation. So especially being a first-time home buyer and at that age, you really don't know much, right? Yeah. And I think because of that experience, I wouldn't say it was the worst, but I feel like I can give a lot better service to my clients now going through that process, right? Because I would have loved to have somebody sit down with me, go on the whiteboard, explain all the details and why we need this versus this, or why you qualify for this versus this, right? Just understanding the details. I think education is super key when it comes to this, because if you're getting yourself into a mortgage, buying a house is one of the biggest purchases in somebody's life, right? You want to make sure that they're fully educated. So to answer your question, I think through that process, it really helped me, understand what is a good, experience versus a bad experience.
And you said something back to about sacrifice, which I love, because, and you were very modest the way you said it, but I think a lot of people could have went through, what you went through when you were younger and 17, moving in with uncle, that could shape a lot of people differently. Okay, you obviously responded to it, and here you are today, successful. And a lot of people don't have those same responses when their back is up against the wall and they make a mistake, and now they're trying to, find their way. I think we've all, in this business, we all go through this point where you are trying to find your way. What are you going to do the rest of your life? When you don't go to college, like it's tough. Like you want to try to find that way, and it's different for everybody, that path. But to go from that to buying a property, a few years later is a big move. Okay. So going through that process, okay, and then now building your business, what do you take from, kind of that growth when you were younger also to now building your business? Because I feel like you have this, I look at it, and I think a lot of people struggle with the process of going out, and you don't seem like you have any fear. Like you're not thinking about the outcome, you're thinking about the process. So where does that come from? Because I notice it, you just meet with consultations. A lot of people are afraid to sit face-to-face with someone. A lot of them are afraid to, reach out to a realtor or go to an open house or do these things. And I see you doing these things like so it's like just a part of your process. So where did that kind of no fear, and I'm sure inside you're thinking you probably have some fear, but like how have you kind of trained yourself to not think about that and really not focus on what, get in your head or overthink it? Because that's what a lot of new loan officers do. So did that come from anything when you were younger, or did you play sports when you were younger?
You know what? Yes, I did. I was really involved in sports. So I think the coaching and just being able just to have that mindset, right? Because it's like a lot of it is mental, right? And I think if you go through it, like everybody's gonna have the first time for everything, but you'll never get better. You can never progress if you don't do it for the first time, right? So I think there's definitely fear, and there's definitely nervousness of okay, what's gonna happen? What's this, but you can't control the future. You can only control the present. So what I think is when I go in there, I'm doing the best I can. At least I showed up, and learning from this experience, whether it goes good or bad, I can use that to leverage it for the next time, right?
Absolutely.
So I think just doing that and just going there confident, just know exactly, that even though this is your first time, you're going to get better at it as you continuously do it.
Yeah, and I think that confidence is very, it draws people in. And I think you mentioned education, like being able to even think about education. It's one of the reasons why average first-time home buyer is 38. But the fact that you care about that experience and you had a bad, not a bad experience, but just a different one than you're providing today, all leads to the business that you're building because you're aware of it. And I think that goes a long way into building a successful business. Is you have to have an experience that you had that shapes how you feel about something, which you do. But then you have to, as I always say in this office, like you have to care about the people that you work with. And it's not something you can't teach someone to care.
Yeah.
Like you either have that or you don't. And I noticed from the very first time we spoke that you have this genuine, kind of way that you communicate, that you can tell that you really care a lot about you, your business, the people around you, and it's contagious. And I think that's why you've done so well in a short period of time. So I want to compliment you for that. But what I wanted to, we kind of met, in a different circumstance. So you were, we were looking for a sales assistant, okay? And we didn't talk too much before that. And you decided that you were going to work in a different, you wanted to be a loan officer, which I'm glad you brought up, and we were excited for that. You and I had a brief conversation. Next thing you know, I offered you a position to come to the branch. And I'll tell you, the main reason why that is because when we spoke, I don't even know if you remember the conversation, there was no hesitation in your voice, because I had asked you oh, well, what do you want to do? You're like, well, I want to be a loan officer. And you just went into this quick response, and you laid out kind of what your thoughts were about being a loan officer, and that was something that you really wanted to do and you didn't want to wait anymore. Immediately I was like, well, if you want to be a loan officer, why don't you just, do it here?
Yeah.
So what made you kind of think that this was going to be the right position for you, coming back to rate, working with our branch, and what kind of led you down that path? Because again, our initial conversation had nothing to do with being a loan officer.
No, 100%. And you know what? I think over the last few years, since starting in 2020, there's been a couple of different positions that I've been on, and whether it be back end and stuff. So my experience at Rate has always been great. That's why I feel like, I think I explored a couple of different options elsewhere, and it just wasn't the same. And I was working with a couple of different teams, and I just heard a lot, great, things about you and your team. So I ended up just taking the initiative and just be like, you know what? Let's go for it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And because of my experience over the last couple of years, I feel like it was kind of developing and slowly leveling myself up little by little. And I think taking another year to be a sales assistant was just I was trying to be comfortable, And I think going back to your question, what makes you fearless, sometimes you got to be uncomfortable in order to be in those better positions, right?
Yeah.
So although the decision to transition made me feel a little bit, uneasy because it was just something new, I knew that I was confident in myself, and then with the right team and the right resources, I think, the success.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say and you touched on it, but getting uncomfortable, I remember stepping into being a loan officer, nothing prepares you for that. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't do it is because it's not easy, and it is very uncomfortable. And going to 100% commission is never an easy, path. And, I joke about it with realtors all the time. I have a couple of realtors who, my good realtor I know, he has 4 kids, and he decided to quit a, salary job to become a realtor with 4 kids. That's not an easy decision.
It's a risk.
Yeah. But I think there's certain people that when you can make that sacrifice and you can do it, it can really lead to something special, but you just got to, really work at it. Now, so you come into the branch and I feel like it's been a great fit for us. I'll just say, like, I love having you around for a lot of reasons, but one of the main reasons is that as someone who's been in the business for 20 years, to see someone come in that has the energy and the passion that you do, and, showing up on weekends, coming in the office on Sundays, like, honestly, it charges me up. Like, it gets me going because I like the passion that you have because it brings that same energy to everyone in the office. When you have a team and a culture that you're trying to build and you have someone that comes in who is young, doesn't know any better, and then just hungry, it makes everyone else pay attention.
Okay.
They go, hey, what's Fabian doing? Oh, he's got another contract coming in now. I need to get another contract. So it's been really good for his energy, but how has it been coming in with, like, the way our office is structured? You've had some chances to, be around the entire team, meetings, and, we've had some holiday events. What's that been like compared to where you've been in the past? And has that been helpful to kind of give you the time you need to kind of build your business?
Yeah, 100%. You know what? I think being here, I think after the first week, I already felt like comfortable and at home. You know what I mean? And I feel like just because the team, they're welcoming me and they were like super supportive in regards to the my whole transition here. And I feel like compared to my other my past experience, essentially, the events and just being part of a team that everybody's so connected, I feel like that's super crucial when it comes to your work life as well, right? Because sometimes you can sit in a cubicle and everybody does their own thing and you can be, straightforward, but it's never, you don't get that energy, like you said, right? And it's like friendly competition. You hear somebody else getting a contract, you're like, oh my God, great job. But, I'm going to get the next one before you know what I mean? So I think that the team and the environment really did help, kind of boost my success here as well.
So what does it look like over the next, I would say, 90 days? Like, what does your day look like? How are you structuring your day? How are you leveraging, the team and the tools that we have here? And what does that look like moving forward? Are there anything that is challenging right now that is making you kind of really dig deep? Or like, what does it look like the next 90 days?
You know what? The next 90 days, I am focusing on, I've been telling this to everybody, is like, I'm going to let everybody's going to know who Fabian is, right? And that's just being able to get myself out there, whether it be networking with realtors, business owners, or just anybody in my actual sphere, just letting them know what I do, what I can do to help them, and just getting my face out there more, right? So I think it's more networking, getting in contact with more realtors, trying to let them know, that our team is actually the best to work with compared to, a lot of other ones. So I think that's the goal, just to really get my name out there and really just be more present.
And what is your, what's the ultimate goal for Fabian? So you figure this is your kind of beginning of your journey of being 100% focused on being a loan officer. So what does it look like a year from now and then 5 years from now? Like, what's your ultimate goal?
That's a great question. I definitely, I have a goal of closing a certain amount of units, consistently, right? Helping a certain amount of families. So I always want to be able to progress every year, just do better than the last, even if it's 1%. I think that's the mindset that it comes from, being 1% better every single day. So a year from now, I definitely want to be, consistently closing, just being closing, because, just being there at the closing today gives you that rush, you know what I mean? It makes you just like want to do it again and just, over and over and over again, just helping these families and seeing them, go from a position that they knew nothing much about, renting, to finally building wealth, through owning real estate. And that's because, you put two and two together, and without the education and knowledge, that wouldn't have been possible. So to answer your question, 5 years from now, I like to think big sometimes. And I think a lot can change in 1 year. So 5 years, I was a completely different person 5 years ago. So in 5 years, I really do think I want to be able to build my own team. Get to a point where, I have other loan officers, working underneath me, or I'm building my own team of, processing team and things like that, just kind of like yourself.
I mean, I think you're definitely on your way. And I would say, if I could give you any advice as someone who's been in the business for 20 years, like, if there was a list of things that you need to do to be successful, you have all of them. The one advice I would give you is, like, you want to focus 100% on your business. And you mentioned it very first thing is make sure everyone knows Fabian. And the more you focus on that, everything else will fall into place. Like, everyone always wants to get from point A, step 1 through 10, and they want to get to 10. But sometimes the most growth happens in the first 4 steps. But sometimes people are so focused on, everything down the line that I made a lot of mistakes in my career because I was so focused and wanted to, I was always thinking bigger, and that's great, and you want to think bigger, but you really want to focus on the basics. A lot of the team, if you notice, a lot of the things that we've built here in this branch, it's not anything like that's like earth shattering. Like anything we do is not, that it's just we focus on the basics.
Right. Yeah.
Phone communication, education, transparency, speed, all the little things, and then pretty much everything else then people are more attracted and want to work with us. So the most important thing in your business is like, it's much harder to go from 0 to 25 million than it is to go from 25 million to 100 million. And the main reason why is because you're trying to figure out everything in that 0 to 25. Mm-hmm. Once you get to 25 and you got all your, the steps 1 through 5 figured out, then everything else just scales automatically. Yeah. And then before you know it, you have your own team. You have loan officers that want to work with you because you're attracting them to what you're doing. So, the most important thing I feel like is just, I always say to others is trust the process, which you do a great job of that. And then just really fine tune the basics. And then basically everything else can build from there. It's the easiest way to build a business. This business is not as hard as we make it. It really isn't. Like we make it so much harder than it actually is. And if it's honestly, people get coaches, they do all these crazy things when at the end of the day, for someone like yourself that is working on weekends, answering the phone and doing all the little things, that's what's going to propel you so much more than anything else. Because a lot of people like the easy button. They want to get, if I just get a coach, I'm going to do 100 million and they're going to, figure out this easy path towards it. There's nothing easy about this business. Like, you got to answer the phone. You got to work on weekends. I was answering the phone during the Super Bowl. Like that's what we do in this business. So, on that, what has been the biggest, has there been anything that kind of shocked you about, when you came here about the way we do things that's different than what you would have thought coming in?
100%, yeah. And you know what? I would think going back to what you were saying, the transparency and communication, I think those are the two main key points. When I came here, going through those meetings that you were having with the team, on a daily basis, even just those meetings every morning, just to prepare for the day and be like, okay, what needs to be done? What has been done? What needs attention? I feel like that is super important because it kind of structures everybody's day, right?
Yeah.
I've been on other teams where it's kind of been laid back, where it's like, okay, I can trust you to do this, but there's no urgency. There is nobody, keeping everybody accountable, right?
Yeah.
And I think the communication and transparency has been super crucial when it comes to my business and helping my clients as well. And then your team has been amazing to work with, just because they're on top of it. You know what I mean? They're on top of every single thing, and this process is so wow.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I think it's what I always say. It's the right people in the right seats, but it takes someone like you to come in, or some of the other people that we have that first acknowledge it, number one, and understand why we do these things, but then also being able to leverage it to go and get business. It's one thing to have a good process and a good team, but if you don't know how to go out and sell that, then you're just like everybody else.
Right.
And I think you've done a good job in your short period of time of kind of recognizing and kind of tapping into it and realizing how important that is, so you can go out and use it, because now it allows you to help more families. It allows you to, reach out to more realtors. It allows you to attend things because you're not in your office worried about, files and doing everything. Now you're out with the consumer, okay? Yeah. So you've been able to kind of tap into that and do that. So you mentioned something about education and meeting clients face-to-face, which I know you do. And most of the business nowadays is done through digital mortgages and all these things, okay? Where it's the consumer wants something fast. I'll text you, do the online mortgage application. A lot of my business is built this way. What, kind of made you, focus so much on meeting face-to-face? You mentioned a whiteboard. I've seen some of your videos where you're going through, with a buyer. So where did that come from? And how is that what you use to separate yourself from your competition?
Most definitely. And I think a lot of people are visual learners, especially when you got a bunch of numbers, percentages, down payments, come into play. I think when you're on the phone and just kind of talking about it, they might understand, but I feel like it's a lot more easier to write it out and really just explain it,
Yeah.
detail by detail, and give them the opportunity as you're going through it to answer questions, right? And I get a lot of clients too at the end of the whole presentation and consultation, they're like, hey, can I take a picture of that? Because we're kind of breaking down their finances, breaking down the plan, breaking down exactly what you need to do step by step. Even if they're not ready now, I still sit down with them regardless if they're not going to apply or not. Why? Because I want to prepare them. And it's like I said, it's just about education. It's more about impacting and helping other people versus actually just getting applications, right?
Yeah, and I think, I always talk about financial literacy, and I think people will never admit to you what they don't know because they're embarrassed, or they don't want to let you know that they don't know what this means, or they don't know how down payment factors into a purchase. They don't know what earnest money is. And a lot of times they just don't ask questions because the realtor or the lender will just assume that everyone understands. It never gets brought up. And then all of a sudden they go through the whole process and they feel completely lost because they didn't have that education. Or they decide not to purchase because they feel like I'm just totally confused. This is overwhelming. So for you taking that time, I think is what separates you from a lot of your competition. Now, do you use that when you meet a new realtor as a way for you to kind of position yourself with that realtor to better help them build their business as well?
100%. Yeah, I've actually had a new realtor sit with me through a consultation one time, and at the end, he told his client, man, I should have had another client, and I should have sent him to Fabian, because I think this is amazing. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think it just builds confidence, with the realtor and the borrower, the client, right? Because it just lets them know exactly what to expect, and it makes our job easier too. Because that way, when we're going through the process, once we get under contract, they know exactly what the next step is, rather than just kind of putting it up in the air, like, okay, what's next? You know what I mean?
And so on that, I've been talking a lot about, everyone's been talking about how to buy a home. So a lot of it is like, there's these 10 steps on how to buy a home, and then they'll go through that. And it's like, this is earnest money. This is when you make an offer. This is your pre-approval. And I've been focusing a lot about the why to buy a home, because the how is out there everywhere, okay? Yeah. The why is, why should I buy now versus waiting? Why should I buy now? Or why aren't home prices going to go down in the future? Like, do you focus anything on why, as far as like building equity and those? Do you cover a lot of that in your consultation?
100%, yeah. Okay. And I kind of really do specify that when you're paying rent, you're also paying a mortgage, right? Yeah. You're just not paying your own. You know what I mean? And understanding it from a landlord perspective, obviously, it's great to have rental income coming in, but after those 30 days are done, you're paying that rent. You're never going to see that money again. So I kind of explain to them, look, you're paying rent for 5 years. That money you're never going to see. You're not building appreciation. You're not building any equity. You're not paying down something that's eventually going to be yours. So I do say this, where sometimes rent payments can be almost equivalent to a mortgage payment. Maybe $100 or $200 more, but it's going to be something that's going to be yours eventually, right? Yeah. And aside from paying down that loan, you're leveraging a 6-figure asset. You're leveraging the bank's money to go ahead and put it into the real estate market, which is going to allow you to get 3 to 5% a year.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that's the thing that most people don't realize. And I think when they can see that visually and understand that, and most of the decisions that people make not to purchase and rent are based off of fear. And that's where that financial literacy comes in. Again, I keep referencing, but the average age of 38, those people want to buy. They just don't know how to get from point A to point B to do that. And I think those face-to-face consultations that you do make a huge impact on those families. And I'm sure they walk away with a way better understanding than they did before. But then you're also providing that same education to your realtor partners as a way for them to get face-to-face, because so many clients, I mean, if you imagine, even 2-3 years ago when we were in COVID, most transactions, realtors were meeting a client at the house for the first time. And that's how our business was done for so long, is where, we got in this but now with buyer agency agreement and everything that happened with commissions, realtors are having to meet with clients a lot more face-to-face before searching properties because of the new guidelines, which was the best thing that came out of that, which I know nobody likes it, but it was one of the best things. Is the buyer consultation has become a lot more prevalent than ever before, whereas a couple of years ago, it just wasn't something that people would do. So now you're in the office, you're leveraging the team. What does your daily routine look like? Is it something you're consistently working on? Do you really focus on a small set of tasks at a specific time? Like, how disciplined are you on your actual, day to day? Is it something that you're still working on? The reason I ask you this is that I love asking loan officers this question, because the thing is, we all think we're so different half the time, but a lot of times we do a lot of the same things, because successful people are very disciplined in their approach to things, and you can't just kind of walk in the day and say, oh, what am I going to do today? So do you have a specific way you set up your day?
You know what? Yeah. So, I mean, first things first, I always want to be in the office. I think the environment and where you work is going to determine, how productive you are as well.
Yeah.
And being here, like you said, with the team, with the energy, I feel like that really just kind of gets, me going, right?
Yeah.
So, first things first, I definitely want to be in the office. And then if I need to go in and respond to any emails from yesterday or things like that, I'll go in and handle that. But essentially, my goal is to fill up my calendar, right?
Yeah.
I never want to see an empty week or empty day. I just feel stressed when it's like, okay, I don't have any calls scheduled. But so I really am following up with, pre-approvals, getting in contact with realtors, see how they're doing, even if it's a regular conversation, not do anything with clients, just being on the phone and just getting in contact with multiple people.
So you're very heavy on outbound calls, checking in, 100%. Now, are you also prospecting newer realtors and connecting with them? Like how much of your time is focused on that versus existing, transactions?
Yeah. So, being new too, there's still a couple things that I need to kind of work on as well, as far as getting everything kind of managed. But my goal is to essentially, like you said, connect with newer realtors on a, daily or weekly basis, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be a breaking bread or just, getting on the phone with them or Zoom call, just kind of going over, our process and the benefits that we can kind of provide them.
Yeah.
Right?
I was in the business 2 weeks and it's something I still follow today, but I had a boss that gave us a stat and I still follow it today. And I've probably told you this, but you need 200 prospects, so realtors that you're calling on or that you want to do business with, and you need to get 20 of them, okay, to send you a deal a month.
It's a numbers game.
It's a numbers game.
Yep.
Okay. 200 realtors that you're communicating with over a period of time, and you want to get 20 of them to send you the business. Now, when you look at it that way, if you said, well, I want to do 20 deals a month, it seems so crazy.
Right,
okay?
right, yeah.
But when you break it down that way, it's actually not that crazy. 20 realtors to send you one deal a month that's going to close every single month. It's not crazy. And sometimes they're going to send you more than one. Sometimes they're going to send you less. But it's 20 realtors, okay? And you need, that are going to do a minimum of 12 deals a year and that you're going to try to get 100% of those deals. Or maybe they do 20, but you get 12 because it's hard to get 100% of the business. But really, that's what you need is you need 200 realtors that you're prospecting to get 20. And if you think about it like that, it's not that crazy. Once you then figure that out, then you can go after another 200 to get the 20. And that's really, if you think about it as a numbers game, obviously you got to have, a good process. I laugh because there's so many people that are just so focused on coffee appointments. I'm going to meet with coffee. And then they get a loan submitted and they have a shitty process. And then, it doesn't matter because you get one opportunity.
Yep,
okay. So that's the beauty of being in this office is we have the process dialed in. All you got to do is just get the deal, and then we're going to make you look good. And then we're going to, that's really the idea of what I wanted to build, because it was the one thing that I always struggled with, for my first 15 years of my career is I was really good at getting in business inbound, but then I struggled trying to get it through the processing because I didn't focus on the processing side. It's why I spent so much time focused on this. So, when you look at it that way, that's really what you want to focus on more than anything is just getting 200 prospects, to get those 20 deals a month. And when you think about it that way, it's not that.
It's the perspective. And I think I like the way you put it too. Yeah. Like you said, it's a numbers game. So if you make a certain amount of calls, and that's the thing where it's like, even if you get a bunch of no's, the next one, you're closer to that one yes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
well, and I think too, I always say, you got to have no's that almost motivate you. You got to have a sickness almost, and you got to enjoy people telling you no, and almost let it just even drive you even more. I never got to a point where someone would say, Eric, I don't want to do business with you. I already have a lender. And I was I would go back and I would be, even if people were rude to me, I would always say I'm going to do business with that person. You got to have a sickness where, it's the old analogy, Michael Jordan missed more shots than he made. It's this thing like golf, you have all these bad shots and then you get one good shot and that's all you remember. Yep. It's the same thing in our business. You have to have a very short memory. And I think that's what makes you very unique, Fabian. And I'll say this is I kind of said in the beginning, but I see you doing all these things and I don't see yourself in your own head where you're second guessing the things that you're doing. You're just doing them because you need to do them. And you're not really thinking about the outcome. You're getting uncomfortable. And hoping that leads to something. That's where it's going to lead, to something good. 100%. So as you go through this process, you've focused a ton education. You mentioned transparency, okay? So was that kind of eye-opening a little bit how much we share with everyone as far as good, bad, the ugly when things come in? Was that, something that was unique to, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And you know what? I hear a lot of stories from realtors where like they don't like to hear, even if it's bad news, they just like, tell me now, so we can deal with it now. And they'd appreciate that, even if it doesn't go the right way. But as soon as you find out, you let them know so that we're on the same page and find a solution together. And I think being transparent, even whether it be with the client or the realtor, good or bad, it's going to be appreciated. You know what I mean? So I think that's super, super important because you don't want to sit back and hide something. I feel like it's just going to eat you inside. And then you're just like, I need to make this call. But the faster you do it, the faster you get uncomfortable, the faster you get over it. And then you realize it's not even that bad. You know what I mean?
And the best relationships I have, you've heard me say this before, but the best relationships I have in this business are through conflict. And because we handled it correctly and we went through, meaning there was some tension, okay? But we were transparent and we let people know what was going on. And that built the relationship because we weren't hiding anything. We were being out front. We were letting them know like, hey, we have an issue. This buyer, we need to do this, this, and this. And we're always solution-based, but we never, I think a lot of times as loan officers, we don't want to give bad news because we want to be the savior. And you may save it 9 out of 10 times, but you don't save it on the 10th.
That's all
you've ruined the relationship.
Yep.
Yeah. So transparency is something as a newer loan officer, when you learn that up front, the other thing is it takes so much pressure off your back. When you carry that around,
it's tough.
And you go home at night and you're like, I got to figure this deal out. These people think they're closing in a week. I haven't really said anything and we're all struggling to get it done. Like, it's brutal. Absolutely brutal. It's the worst thing. But when you can figure that out, realtors will want to do business with you because they know how transparent. They'll be like, when I send Fabian something, he's going to tell me exactly what I need to do. And I never feel like I'm in the dark. I always joke around, there's never been a realtor that complained I updated him too much. Never. Like it never happens. But if I meet a new realtor and they have an existing relationship or a relationship that just went sour, 9 times out of 10, it's out of transparency. Hey, I wasn't aware. I sent them, or her, a lead and I never heard back. Or, hey, we get these deals and if it's not a good credit, I don't hear back on the client.
That's
or
horrible.
like, that's always the same complaint. So for me, when you're transparent and communicate, you're 10 times ahead of everybody else because of simple transparency. So it's really important.
100%, yeah.
Yes. So on the education piece. So I know you're focused a lot on that when you do that. How much has that helped you, okay, with your existing clients? Are they more inclined to then refer you business because you're providing this level of education? Because the reason I ask is that a lot of people assume that, our job is to get a mortgage for a client, okay? Mm-hmm. And that's what we facilitate. We're getting, but you've kind of taken this whole other role where you're meeting them face-to-face with a realtor, which is unique, okay? You're providing education. You're going on a whiteboard of, providing all these different things. You're going through, scenarios, you're helping them out. So, what has that been like from a referral standpoint? Have you seen the difference in what that means when the clients close? And what is your communication with them after closing?
Yeah, 100%. So I think they really do appreciate it because it's something that I've also thought of too. I'm like, why don't they teach us in school? Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, you're never going to go to a class on how to buy a home, or they're never going to teach you, the details. And so I think I have to take that into consideration when, especially first-time home buyers, like they know nothing about nothing. And to us, it seems like the basics, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, but to others, it's completely brand new. So I think that's really helped me because they appreciate the value that I'm giving. Like I said, they like to take pictures because they understand their finances now more, that I kind of showed them, in the whiteboard and kind of give them step by step. So even if they don't qualify now, they can, they walk away educated, confident, and they know that we're able to give them, a valuable experience, right? I think that's just value. Giving value is super important. And, like I said, even if they don't qualify now they can go back to their family and friends and be like, you know what? I found out that I need to do this, this, and this in order for us to qualify at this. Because it's never going to be a no. Hey, you don't qualify, bye. It's more so, okay, what do we need to do? What steps we need to take? Let's break everything down in order for you to become a homeowner in the next 3, 6, 12 months.
I think that's huge is giving them the game plan of what the process is of them getting to that point. Like our job, as I always say, is our job isn't to convince anybody to buy a home.
No, never.
We're there to provide them information to make an informed decision. If they choose not to buy a home, that's fine. And that's, quite honestly, the outcome that happens quite often. It's like, hey, it's just not the right time. And that's okay.
Yeah.
I always say, like, some of my best referral sources are sometimes people I've never done a loan through. And it was because I took that time to go through, numbers and scenarios and work with a family member and help them through. And I've had like a whole family involved, and you're helping them, but never do a loan, okay? Because it just wasn't right for them. But they'll refer me to friends and family because they're like, oh my God, you took so much time and you explained everything to us. So there's a value in that, in helping families that a lot of people just don't think of, because there's so little of that being, where people are getting the education that they need to get to that point. And sometimes, advising someone not to buy a house, maybe is the best decision they could make if they're not ready for it. Or saying, if you do this, this, and this is going to be your path to homeownership. And now they got something to shoot for.
100%.
And it's really on them. If they really want it bad enough, they'll do it. And if they don't follow these steps, then, it's on them. But I think giving them that information to make an informed decision can be life-changing for a lot of these people.
100%.
One thing I wanted to touch on is I've noticed you do a really good job on social media. So obviously your age group, you guys are much better than us old people on social media. But so you've done this great job on social media. So how much of your day-to-day business do you focus on that? And how do you let it not consume you? Because I think we can all admit, like, it can consume us at times.
It's another job. I think social media is a second job, but I feel like reflecting over the last few months that I've been really more active, it's really boosted my business. One, getting connected with realtors instead of approaching realtors trying to give them your value. You're posting this content that's valuable. You're not out there like a salesman, but then they see that. And they're like, you know what? I want to work with this person. So instead of you reaching out to these different realtors, now realtors are reaching out to you, right? Because you're providing value. And I think that's a lot of my deals have came from Instagram and just those reels and just being able to provide value, things that are like, simple to us, but not so commonly explained, to others. Right?
So let's talk on that. So you have people directly will see one of your reels, okay? Because this is like the holy grail of what every person like is trying to do, okay?
Yeah.
So you do a reel, okay? And it's based off of something with like education, okay? It's not, look at me, I'm at a closing of my clients. It's an education piece, okay? Can you talk a little bit about like what happens before doing that reel? Like, how do you decide this is something that, I want to make into a reel? Is there any thought around that and what that looks like, getting it out? And how much time do you spend, or do you try not to over edit it? Like, what's that whole process like?
Yeah. So, I think with the short, form content, I feel like that's always the best. Nobody wants to sit there and just, watch you blab on for hours, right? So getting straight to the point, giving the value, making it easy. I think that's what's really crucial. And I think a lot of people will watch my videos, and even if they don't interact or anything, I'll go to like a family event or a function and be like, you know what? Hey, I seen that video that you posted. And I'm like, like, why didn't you like it? No. But so I think just
to that point, you never know how many people watch it because a lot of people won't.
You'll be surprised.
Interact with it.
You'll be so surprised. I'm like, I didn't even know you were watching. You know what I mean? And I think that just keeps you top of mind. And like, I think just giving value is super important. And just, I don't spend too much time on the editing part. I just kind of make it, straightforward, crop it as much as I can and just kind of get straight to the point. So that way, they take the 30 seconds, 45 seconds and learn something.
Do you have like a moment where you're doing something with a client and you're talking through something and then you're like, okay, this would be a good piece that I should post based on the question from the customer? Is there anything like, like, is it really just off the cuff, like throughout the week where you get an idea and you just do it? Because I kind of feel like sometimes that's the best way to do it.
100%.
And the more time we think about it and the more we plan it is the more it looks like a commercial.
Yeah.
So like, is there something, is that how you're basically doing it? Is just you come across something, you're like, okay, this is a good topic, I'm going to do this?
Yeah, no, most definitely. And I feel like, as you go through experience, I feel like people like to be real. Being on Instagram and talking about real life situations, real life scenarios, although every situation, every loan is different, there's always a common question, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you answer it once, you're answering multiple people's questions without even knowing.
Of course,
100%.
yeah. When you're doing the reels and stuff, so you get an instant message. Okay, because you said you get deals from that. So is the instant message directly from a consumer that has a question regarding something that you're posting? Is that how it went when you got a lead?
Yeah, you know what? Most of it, I could, because my background is like, with the multi-units, house hacking, landlord, I feel like that's what attracts a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because they want to get into it too. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think that's kind of where it starts. So they understand, okay, I've done it, and now I can teach you how to do it. And that, like I said, just being able to have that consultation or that phone call and be like, hey, I'll give you this information for free. There's a lot of people out there that charge for courses and meetings. And it's like, no, I'm never going to do that. And I've had people tell me, hey, you should make an ebook and charge for it. I'm like, no.
I just saw someone that was doing that. They were charging $99 for an ebook on how to buy a home.
That's insane.
And it's like probably something they made in ChatGPT that they just like, it's crazy. Like, again, that's our job. I feel like we have a responsibility to the communities that we serve to provide that education.
100%.
So on that a little bit, where did you grow up?
I grew up on the south side of Chicago. You know what? I kind of bounced around everywhere. I've never really had like one area. I've been, through Cicero, Midway.
Do you feel a sense of responsibility to kind of serve the community you grew up in? And is that something that's important to you?
Most definitely. And I think that's one of the reasons I got a license as well. So once I bought my first, multi-unit, I feel like that's when my mind really opened. I'm like, wow, this is possible. I did it at a young age. I need to let all my friends and family know that they can do it too.
Well, think about if the average person buys at 38. Okay, I keep going back to that, but just think about that. Think about someone at 20 that buys a property, okay? And you do average appreciation of 4%, which in DuPage County last year was 7.4, but 4% going back to 1930 is the average appreciation in the United States, okay? So 4% a year if you buy at 20 versus 38. Think about the net worth of that individual at age 60 and 70 of someone buying at 20 versus 38. It's like insane. It's insane.
It's crazy.
The difference of, and did it impact your life and the fact that you weren't able to, because the fear is like, well, if I buy a property, I'm not going to be able to enjoy my life, because at 21 years old, most people are thinking about their social life, not their personal life.
100%,
and you made a sacrifice, because you've used that word a couple times, where you bought this property. And just like imagine the difference. That's what I always talk about, is like, it's one thing to have the rental income and that, but I look at where are you going to be 50, 60? Like, do you want to live a good life now, or do you want to live a good life when you're retired?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us think in the immediate and not long term. And I think getting a younger generation to know and understand how to build themselves, that peace of mind. Something I always talk about is, buying a home at a young age and having that appreciation provides a lot of luxuries, okay? But there's no better luxury than to go to bed at night and not worried about paying a bill. What are you going to do when you retire?
Yep.
How am I going to pay for my kids to go to college?
Yep.
All these things that a lot of people spend their entire life stressed out about, like the quality of life for someone who buys a property at a younger age and uses that and makes good financial decisions, it's invaluable.
100%.
And you're providing that education and doing that. And I think that is your story, that if I could give you any advice, is like, you need to scream from the rooftops about how you bought your first property at 20, and tell that story in your social media and why people need to work with you, because that is what makes you so valuable to the people that work with you. Because you're not just telling people to buy a property because you get a commission. You're telling them because it's obviously helped you. It's shaped who you are. It's where you are today. It's why you're the person that you are. So you got to find a way to kind of tell that story a little bit.
Yeah, and that's something I really do believe in. I feel like once I got into the whole real estate, when I bought my first property, I just, like I said, it was mind blowing how crazy we're able to use and leverage, the bank's money, only putting down, 3 to 5%, and then the bank covering 95, 97% of it. And you're putting your 6-figure asset into the real estate market, like you said, it's going to appreciate 4% a year. Yeah. And the way I think about it is this, like, okay, is 30-year-old, 40-year-old Fabian going to look back at 20-year-old and be like, thank you for doing those things at that age? You know what I mean? Or is it going to be like, man, why didn't you do more? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I think you got to think about it long term. Real estate is long term. Everybody wants to get that quick cash flow, and they think they're going to retire soon. When I bought my first multi-unit, I was like, oh yeah, like I'm not going to have to work after I buy this. And it was far from it. But I do think, by the time, those loans are paid off, when I'm 50 years old, I'll have a couple properties paid off. The appreciation over those 30 years is going to be insane. Yeah. And that debt is going to be significantly less.
Yeah,
right?
And then you're just making money at that point.
And
your quality of life after 50 is going to be significantly improved, when most people are like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Social Security, I don't have a pension. Like, I can't live off of that. And then now you have these assets that you can, like, that's where I think from an education standpoint that we need to really focus. And that gets to me, we're at the why. Why should I buy a home at 20 is because of that, not, well, this is how you do it. If you just explain to a 20-year-old how to do it, they may get it a little bit, but when you show them the why with the position that you can put yourself in and the peace of mind and the quality of life you can create from something like that, it's not a sales pitch, it's not anything. It's just putting yourself in a position to financially be independent and go to bed at night and not worry about the things that a lot of people worry about. So what's the one thing that you've implemented since coming here that you think that's had the biggest impact since you've started being a loan officer full-time? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, most definitely. I think one thing that I really did start, being here is just working more. I think being available 7 days a week has really kind of set me apart from a lot of other people. And I feel like realtors and even clients, they want somebody that's available, right? Somebody that's going to pick up the phone, answer their questions, although it's not right then and there, or maybe sometimes it is. But I think that's something that I've been kind of, ever since January started, I've been working 7 days a week. And it's like, every day's Monday. Yeah. Every day is Monday.
Listen, you hear me say it all the time. I'm available 7 days a week, 7 into 11 o'clock. I've been doing that for 20 years in my career. Okay. It's never impacted my quality of life. This is what I do. Yeah. And if you want to be successful in this business, if you take the attitude like, oh, well, they're going to call me when I'm working and nothing's I hear all these loan officers and coaches say nothing's a 911, nothing's important. When you're working with the right partners and the right people, I love coming into work in the morning. Like I love taking those calls on the weekend. Like there's nothing, if you talk to Tom and I, like we get charged up when we're getting a lot of contracts and a lot of calls and we're doing payments, like that fires us up. Like we love that part of the business.
Sometimes doesn't even feel like work. It just feels like it's something you're naturally like supposed to be doing.
You have to have a vested interest in the people that you work with and enjoy, helping them succeed. Because when they're working, we have to be working. If you take the attitude like, oh, well, I don't need to work on weekends, you need to find another profession.
100%.
And I think you've again, and it's something where we've never even had to have that conversation. You came in here, you've been doing the work, you're available. I think the first weekend you were here, you were doing an open house. Yep. The next weekend you asked if you could come in and meet on a Saturday, which was like, okay, yeah, this guy's the real deal. Because I remember early on in my career coming in every Saturday and Sunday. Like, I remember my boss had said to me, he's like, you want to go find successful people? He's like, go to a Dunkin' Donuts at 6 a.m. Yep. He's like, you're not going to find anybody that is like, you just sit in there and watch the people going in and out. Now it's probably a drive-through or whatever else. But like people that are out early in the morning are usually successful.
They're out to get it.
Go to the health club, 5 o'clock in the morning. You're going to find people that are successful because they're getting their day started. They're trying to, so that's who you want to surround yourself with, because those are the people that are going to motivate you. If you're around a bunch of salespeople that take off weekends, that's not who you want to surround yourself with. That's not good for them. So what do you think your biggest strategy is the next, I know I said the next 90 days, but is there a single thing that you really want to focus on the next 30, 60 days? Now that you kind of had 30 days to kind of learn about the team and kind of how our process works, has it kind of changed your mindset a little bit for, how you're going to attack the market? Now knowing kind of the resources that you have in the branch?
Yeah, most definitely. And I think the team has allowed me to kind of go out there and really, like I said, get everybody to know me.
You get a contract, you submit it to the team, and then you go out and get another one.
I can trust the team that they're going to take care of my people. They're going to take care of my clients. They're going to be communicated, and they're going to update all parties, right? Yeah. And I have to go out there and just kind of bring in some more contracts.
Have you had any feedback from your realtors that you've worked with?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah. One realtor that I never worked with before, and I think the buyer had selected them. I kind of asked, how was your experience? Any feedback? Is like, look, if I didn't have to reach you, that means that you did a good job. Yeah. And it's true. It's like once you get somebody to start asking you for updates, you kind of missed something. Yeah. Right? You weren't transparent. You weren't communicated quick enough. But in the next 30, 90 days, I think the next things I want to start doing is I'm going to be hosting some more events and going back to the education piece, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about events. Yeah.
So I think that's what I'm going to start focusing on now. I actually got one planned in the next 2 weeks. So February 22nd, I believe, is the date. So that'll be my first one. I want to hit different areas of the Chicagoland area. I'm going to go north side, west, south side, and just helping the communities by just educating.
So how are you going to set those up? Are you going to set those up with individual realtors and have them invite clients? Or are you going to do them on your own? with clients, and then how are you going to structure those?
So the first one, I'm actually co-hosting with the Realtor.
Okay.
I do plan on maybe bringing an inspector, maybe an attorney.
Yep.
Moving forward, just kind of give the whole piece of that, so everybody can, talk about the financing, the Realtor side with the contracts, negotiations, then why it's important to get an inspection, and what the attorney's job is as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's great.
I think that's where I'm kind of shooting towards. Is just trying to get, a community to kind of come together and teach.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's great. I mean, you obviously have 100% of the support here in the branch, and we're going to be, in your corner throughout the whole time. And we'll sit down again in a couple months and see how the path is. I'd like to do this every, so people can kind of follow your growth, because I think it's going to be really fun to watch you continue to evolve and continue to grow and continue to kind of find your way in an industry. There's a lot of people in this industry that have, had every excuse in the world, okay, for not being successful, not doing the business that they want. And, the beauty of having someone new in the industry and your value to a lot of the people that you're working with is you just don't know a different, you were involved in COVID, but not as a loan officer.
No, definitely not,
and there's a lot of people, and me included, where, we've been in the business 20 years. We're kind of tainted a little bit because we've experienced different markets where you kind of don't know any better. So you're out there, you're just doing things because it's kind of where we started, is like you're doing things not thinking about the outcome. You're just trying to make things happen for yourself.
100%.
And that's, something to be commended. And we're thrilled to have you here, and it's been a blast. I've told you, separately or in front of other people, like, we're excited for your growth, and I'm excited to see it grow. So lastly, before we end, okay, I ask this to everybody. We'll have a little fun here. So what sports did you play growing up?
I was involved in soccer. I did track and field. I did a little bit of volleyball.
A little bit of everything.
Kind of. I was very kind of just like out there. I was pretty down to try everything.
Okay, that's great. That's great. It makes sense, because you're obviously. So if you weren't in real estate or mortgages, okay, is there anything that kind of is the dream job or what you would want to do?
That's a great question. I've
Money not a factor.
This.
Yeah, money's not a factor.
I don't know. I definitely know I want to be in the business of being able to help people, because ever since I was young, I've always wanted to be like, a firefighter or a policeman, just being able to help.
Yeah.
And, and then I was good at math, and then I put two and two together, and I'm like, okay, I'm using my math, and I'm also helping people at the same time. So I know I want to be able to do so. To answer your question, I don't know. I've always wanted to be like a policeman or a firefighter, just being in the way of
community and helping out.
Helping,
you have the ability to have a massive impact. I think people lose sight of, in our industry and being in the mortgage business, like how much we have the ability to help our community and the impact that we can have on families. And one thing I always say is if you think back, as a kid or anything, like, so many of your memories, when you think about your family, a lot of times are at the house you grew up in.
Right.
Okay. Whether it was owned or rented really doesn't matter. It's around a home. So you think if you help, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 families, like, build that, and I have this thing that I do, like, around Christmas time. I always think about that. Like, I think about all the families that are celebrating, the holidays in a home that I help them. It can be emotional.
Crazy experience.
Yeah. It's like you think about it and the impact, and people bring their kids home for the first time. They have deaths. They have life-altering events. They have all these great things that happen, all revolved around the house. And sometimes we lose sight of that because we're so focused on all the things that we do. So your answer, you have the ability to have a significant impact in your community. So you have to kind of think about it that way sometimes, because we can kind of beat ourselves up at time, or, we don't always get the pat on the back for the work that we do.
Right.
A lot of sometimes it's taken for granted, or it's an expectation to close, but it's all the other things that we do that can have a huge impact. And when you approach it that way, you provide better education, you provide a better experience, more transparency. All the things that we focus on kind of fit into that. So that's a great answer. So I love that answer. I mean, it's better than, I wanted to be a, TV star or something. But I think we'd all like to do that. Yeah. Well, good. Fabian, I really appreciate the time. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you in the office. I mean, honestly, like, it's been like, I feel like you've given an energy in the office where we're all kind of are paying attention a little bit more. And it's good for some of the other people in the office to have you come in and see the success. So we'll do this in a couple months, and I look forward to it, and I look forward to
Glad to be here.
I'm looking forward to the journey.
It's awesome.
Great job.
Thanks.
Thank you.